Mr. Edit Man presents, what's the meanest thing you did as a kid? This girl annoyed me, but she liked hanging out with me so much. I went to my guidance counselor to be like, I have enough friends. How can I get rid of her? He gave me some nice ways of letting her know that her friendship was not fulfilling to me. But I was in elementary school so I took the gist of what he said and just told her to leave me alone. It hurt her pretty bad. She moved not too long after that. I feel terrible 20 years later. Similar story. Tired of being bullied. One day I started to bully a girl, saying bad things about her looks, etc. It made me feel great, invincible, pure schaden fruit, you know. But that night, I could not sleep. Guilty pressed me. Next day, I went to her to ask her forgiveness. I saw fear on her eyes. That look haunts me to this day. Had to repeat a statement over and over to a girl. Finally said, are you ducking death? Turns out she had recently lost almost all her hearing in both ears. Still feel terrible for it. I was at a Taco Bell one night with some friends and there was a mat in front of the doors inside. Whenever someone walked in they tripped on a crease in the mat. Every time someone fixed it I walked over and put the crease back in it. I was super jealous of my younger half sister 8 years younger. She lived with my mom, who had a lot more disposable income. I lived with my dad who struggled to make ends meet BTW. My dad is a much better parent and there are very good reasons why I lived with him. My sister got all these cool toys, new clothes, etc. I even thought her nickname from our mother was better. She called her Love Edu. My nickname was Poo Poo Teeny. Why? I do not have a single clue. Ma is bat malarkey crazy. So I told my little sister that the child with the longest nickname is loved more. She cried a lot. To sum it up, told my baby sister our mother loved me more BC my nickname was longer. Brought a book of matches to daycare. There was kid I did not like. Ed planned on setting him on fire at nap time. My plan did not work as it hoped and I think a teacher took the matches before anything really happened. My older sister invited a friend over when I was probably 7 years old. I was thin. My sister was thin. It's genetic. You get the gist. Anyway, her friend was rather overweight for a 13-year-old. I asked my sister why her friend was so fat, since she'd never seen any other obese kids. Her friend overheard me say it, and it made her cry. She did not spend the night as originally planned, and I felt horrible for having hurt her feelings. Kicked the weird kid in the balls once. A year or two later, him diagnosed with autism, then him the weird kid everyone kicks instead. Karma and ditch. If you only did it once then it's not so bad. In my school there was a kid that was diagnosed with ADHD and he would sometimes kick you in the balls just because you happened to slightly annoy him in some way or another, be it intentionally or not. You know those dried up white dog turds? I convinced my brother they were wild growing marshmallows and got him to put one in his mouth. Holy hell, did he swallow it? No. He spit it out immediately. My little sister and I had separate buckets of Lego. Hers were the ones more targeted to girls. Lots of pink, flowers, etc. But I wanted them. So, fully knowing that they would be nearly impossible to separate, I looked her square in the eye and mixed her entire bucket into mine. I still feel bad about it, and that was about 25 years ago. I found one of the sets she had on eBay and gave it to her for Christmas last year, but I know I cannot really make up for it. We met two families on holiday. One we loved, the other were okay. We invited them to stay at us for a weekend, but the good family could not come. The okay family were wealthy and had a spoiled, annoying little malarkey weird son who was 2 years younger than me. I was 12. He 10. Real brat. Would not shut the duck up about his new iPod Touch and Beats headphones. He would break my stuff then complain that it was not good enough for him. I even came back from brushing my teeth one night to find him in my bed. His mum came in and told me that he was the guest, so he should be allowed to sleep where he wants. I argued after she left, and he ended up crying in his own bed. On the last day, we were going to some landmark and they were gonna go home straight from there. At the end, while our parents were saying goodbye, I begged him to let me have 2 minutes on his iPod. He loved that I was so desperate, so he gave me and timed the minute from his expensive watch. I then used that minute to change his password to some random numbers I did not even know what they were, then opened a game. After the minute was up he snatched it back and did not look up from the game as he got in the car to leave. His parents made him say bye and he finally locked his iPod and looked up. After a half-assed wave, He went back to it. The last thing I saw was his confused face as he typed in his password multiple times. Him looking up to me as I smirked, and then him screaming and kicking his dad's seat as he threw the iPod. I drove off and never saw him again. To sum it up, changed a bratty kid's iPod password to a code I did not even know, then left him and never saw him again. I got very annoyed when a boy in my class was using a gel pen to pick his nose because, well, they were for the class, not just him. Rather than politely asking him to remove it from said orifice, I simply struck the gel pen with force using my palm. It went about an inch up the nostril and stayed there for a couple seconds while he looked really confused before pulling it out. I still remember his horrified face when he looked at me and said, "You could have killed me," which made everyone who did not know already what had happened turn and stare in horror and eagerness. The teacher shouted at me a lot about the dangers of impulsive behavior, such as forcing sharp objects into a passage that leads directly to the brain. And fair one. My comeuppance was a rumor going round that I was a secret murderer, you know, unlike those open murderers you see walking about all the time, which lasted a good few years, or bad few years for me. The worst part of this story is that they were those smelly gel pens you used to get, and Dan was not even picking his nose. He was just trying to get a whiff of the orange zesty chemical aroma that probably got us all high in hindsight. But I did not think about that. I just saw someone breaking the rules and disregarded common sense, and in the process I could have gone to a youth prison for manslaughter. I have no idea if my parents were informed, but if they were, I can only assume that they have been too terrified of their own child to mention it ever since. Bit a kid and threw him off a slide. My little brother packed a bag and said he was running away, so told him nobody cares and locked the door behind him when he left. He came back after a few minutes. I beat up one of my handicapped friends just to fit in, but the hurt and guilt I felt was so overwhelming that over the next few days I apologized so much to him, and to prove it, I defended him from the other mean kids that were harassing him and who I was trying to look cool in front of. I was only 11 or 12 but I learned a lot from that. I never did anything just to fit in after that, and I always stuck up for the weaker ones in society. I guess I learned that I had a deep conscience and heart, because to this day I still feel bad about it. I didn't stomp him or anything. Just a couple punches, but still it was a dirty thing to do. Him and I stayed friends for years, until he passed away. I tricked a kid into eating rocks. He had bullied my sisters and I at school, and was trying to steal our candy. He had left for a bit saying that he would be back. I filled one of those smaller boxes of nerds with the small rocks from the end of the driveway and gave it to him. When he came back, he took the box, downed it, and started spitting it out. A couple decades later, and it still haunts me that I could have choked him. Yes, he was a bully, but that was not a good reason for me to be mean in return. Was not exactly a kid. I was probably 14 or 15, but I wrote duck on the side of the garage in my then 7-year-old little brother's cursive handwriting, in a place where I knew my mom or stepdad would see it. Sure enough, not long after, probably garbage/recycling day, since it was by the bins, I heard my stepdad angrily calling his name. Little brother had no idea what was going on. Lol. I was in my room laughing so hard I was crying. I did not tell him it was me until many years later. I think he assumed it was one of his friends all that time. Ganged up with a random bully to taunt my best friend at recess. She was very unathletic, and we told her that she could not be friends with us unless she could cross the monkey bars. She could not, but she tried many times. I apologized later that day and never hung out with a bully again. But I secretly still thought it was pretty dumb that my friend could not do the monkey bars. Way back when the Power Rangers first came out, a kid in my class had brought a bag of chocolates with the characters of the show. Now this kid and I were better rivals at the time. To put it short, we were both heads of a clique that detested each other. One day during break we were all playing capture the flag on the quad. His clique vs mine. I got cocky and he was able to catch me, so had to go back to my home base. At this point I was livid because I accused him of cheating by camping their flag. So out of spite, I went through his backpack and stole all the Power Rangers chocolates he had and hid them away behind some loose wallpaper. I knew he would blame me, so when they asked me if I have seen them, I told them that they are welcome to check my belongings. Was found innocent. Went back to my P.R. Choco stash at the end of the day and ate them all like a rabid raccoon and got sick as soon as I got home. Some 20 years later he and I are best friends and am godfather to his daughter. Never told him. Convinced my youngest brother to pee down a slide, then pushed him down it. I still feel terrible about it 20 plus years later. I'm not proud of it, but it does have a good resolution, so yay. A kid in grade 3 said he was going to treat me like a king for a day cause it was close to my birthday and my name sounds similar to the word king. I was cool with it at first cause it was little things like opening doors, giving me pencils, asked him often, playing tetherball with me, etc. My Asperger-ridden brain started getting annoyed by it by the end of the day. When this guy attempted to give me a massage, I straight uppercut him. He was crying and bleeding, it was a mess. I had a short fuse and acted a lot without thinking. I could have just asked him to stop, but IDK I was a dumbus. Did not get in much trouble from the school, but I got a beating at home which I deserved. Fast forward 6 years. I run into him at the airport. He was coming back from Japan, and he had just got his 2nd degree black belt. Turns out his parents enrolled him after the horrible thing I did to him, and clearly has done well for himself. I think even now, as this was 14 years ago, has living in Japan with his now fiancé and they're expecting a kid. To sum it up, I punched a kid who was sucking up to me. He became a black belt afterwards, and could easily kick my ass to this day. Also is going to be a father. In 2nd grade, this girl I found annoying had a crush on me and often left little love notes in my desk. I got fed up with it and wrote a note saying I do not love you, I hate you, leave me alone, and put it in what I thought was her desk. Mean thing 1. Turns out I put the note in some other boy's desk and he was an arc. He brought the note to the teacher, who said she was going to take away everyone's recess for the rest of the week if the person who wrote the note did not come forward. I sure as hell did not see any upside for me in the proposition. So no one had recess for a few days. Mean thing 2. You have made it until the end of this video. Now listen here, and listen here closely. Like and subscribe for more curated content by Mr. Reddit Man. Thanks for watching.